G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Mark Hubbard from Blizzard Brewing. He's based in Melbourne, Australia. Thanks for your time today, Mark.
Thank you for having me, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. So I've been chairing the Hobart Brewing Company board for nearly 8 years now. It's a long time and a lot of beer. They're the second largest craft brewery in Tasmania, in Australia, here where I live. And late last year, I think just before Christmas, you popped into the brewery and had a beer in the sun, and then reached out to on email to our general manager asking if we needed funding. And he put you onto me, and I said, no, we don't. We're doing quite well, but thank you anyway. And then we struck up a conversation. We've had a couple of chats around what you're doing now, your role at On Market. Maybe explain to the audience a bit about, because you focus on the brewing corner of On Market, but maybe explain to the audience what On Market is, how, what it does, and how it's a little bit different, say, to Birchall and other crowdfunding platforms.
Yeah, On Market's a financial intermediary, and we do the whole gamut of capital raising, from venture capital to private placements to IPOs to crowdsourced funding. So we have a much broader reach in terms of our capital finance background than some of the just purely crowdsourced funding specialists. But I've come on board with them to help them in the craft beverage industry and in the crowdsourced funding. Crowdsourced funding works really, really well for businesses that are of the size of craft breweries, is to get retail investors in the door, and the size that these investors are willing to invest together as a crowd, make a difference to the strategic ambition of the craft brewery owner, but still allow them to have some valuations in the market that don't give away control, and get them some capital that's serious enough to help them grow.
And Birchall would probably be the biggest, well, I know they are the biggest pure equity crowdfunding platform in Australia, and they've done quite a few breweries on there. I know your mates in the Sunshine Coast, who I'm actually going to go and see next week. They raised $2.5 million at the start of last year, and the month before them, Black Hops in the Gold Coast raised, I think it was their second or third crowd fund. They raised $2 million, the maximum as well that they wanted to go after. But On Market, you've already helped a few breweries, and one of the biggest in the world in the craft space. Do you want to maybe give them a shout out?
Yeah, we did Brewdog in their Australian operations here, and they're probably the largest crowdfunder in the world in any industry. It's an integral part of their business model. When they go into new communities and open new venues, they crowdfund in that community so that they build a loyal following, and they get traction and brand ambassadors from their customer base, and grow their customer base at the same time they grow their capital base. So that's a really powerful model, and they've shown worldwide how powerful that can be in helping them grow. And I can't recall the numbers, but it's hundreds of millions of capital that they've raised through this mechanism worldwide. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they're the star of crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding. Over 10 years, I think they've done many, many raises, and I think they've got over 100 brew pubs around the world now, so they're doing great. And another one, a shout out in the distilling space that you helped a few months ago do a raise, is Hellier's Road Distillery here in Tasmania, who make a great spirit.
So Hellier's Road's really exciting for us. It's a fantastic business in terms of their inventories of aged whiskey. Their start on their competitors for having been the oldest whiskey distillery in all of Australia. The brand recognition they have, the awards that they've won globally. Very highly awarded whiskeys that they make, and a motivated team to grow the business further. And their first start was to open it up to crowdsource funding, and again get brand ambassadors in as they expand their capital base and grow their business.
Yeah, I actually know Mark, the founder of Hellier's Road, who retired a couple of years ago. And I thought it was a genius move, because it was a bunch of, it was a dairy co-op in northwest Tasmania. And Mark approached the board and said, "Well, I think we should diversify risk off the farm, off dairy, and this whiskey thing." And this is in the 90s, well before the craft boom. Down south in Hobart, there's a few dabbling down there, and maybe we should have a look at it. And off they went and did that. And then a year or so ago, I think they divested the dairy arm of their business just to focus purely on distilling. So it's a great story and a great business.
Yeah, it is. One of the legacies from that is they make a whiskey cream,
Oh,
which
it's
is like a
dangerous.
bake. Oh,
It,
it's beautiful. You've had it.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Oh, that's,
so
the
dangerous.
the alchemy of getting a beautiful dairy product like that with a whiskey, and I know it took them quite a bit of research and development to get it so it wouldn't split and it would have the mouthfeel and the taste that they wanted. And oh, they nailed it. It is gorgeous, gorgeous drink. So to marry the legacy of their dairy business with their distilling business and create a product like that whiskey cream, oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, let's swing our focus back onto your brewery. So we've had five breweries on our cast so far, over 500 live, so bugger all, 1%, and only about 12 in distilling. So it'd be great to hear your brewing story, business story. So tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Yeah, so I started Blizzard Brewing in 2015. I finished up my corporate career basically in as CFO in the listed IT services business, and we'd grown that business quite aggressively over the years. And it was time for me to do something for myself. Being from Colorado, you can probably tell I'm American by my accent. I grew up in Colorado, grew up skiing and loving the mountains, and that carried over when I arrived in Australia in 1984. So I've skied all around Australia since those days as well. My family and I put together a ski chalet in Dinner Plain near Mount Hotham in Victoria. So we had our weekender and brought the kids up skiing and so forth. And I decided that I really wanted to spend more time there. And the way to spend more time there is to create a business there. And the business that was needed, being informed by my heritage in Colorado, was a brewery in a ski resort. And of course, there are many, many of those in Colorado. Many ski resorts have more than one brewery. So I decided that I was going to be the one to put the first brewery in a ski resort in Australia. And that's what we set out to do.
It's an even bigger reason for me to finally get to Colorado. Still haven't been there yet. Been to the US a bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, love my big craft beer, but also skiing. I've been skiing since I was 4, and actually an hour and a half from Mount Hotham, where you set up. I grew up not far from there, but Mount Buller was my mountain. An hour. We'd ski there a week or so every year. It was great.
The Buller Road Brewery is in Mansfield at the base of Mount Buller. So they've got the regional high country breweries are doing quite well in Australia now as well. But we were above the snow line in a very, very, very small community at the tippy top of a mountain. So we were a bit further away.
So that pretty much covers the next question, how you started out. Anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, no, I guess one thing that was, going from a corporate career to doing something for myself, I was really pleased with how quickly we got it going. And Dinner Plain probably has about 65 permanent residents. It's a really tiny village. It's 10 kilometers from the ski lifts of Hotham, but there was actually a ski lift that was right out the front door of the brewery. So you could actually go up that ski lift and ski into the brewery. But for being that far away, I got it going from concept to first brew in about 6 or 7 months, which I think was an enormous accomplishment.
That is amazing. Mm.
Yeah, getting your lease, getting your fit out, getting your licensing from your local planning, liquor license, ATO excise license, ordering the equipment, staffing it, getting everything happen in that remote community. And that was really fulfilling for me to be able to achieve that much. So company incorporated in May of 2015. I think we had our licensing in September, October. We started on the fit out in November, and we had our first brew in February.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's an amazing timeline.
Thank you. Yeah.
We launched the Distillers Institute a bit over 4.5 years ago now. We've got over 600 students go through our 2 courses. And part of that is talking about the planning issues and how long it takes. And I know that was, 9 years ago, but that's a phenomenal timeline that you've achieved that in.
Yeah, I had a very helpful council, and they have breweries in that council, and they know how it stimulates the economic environment up there, and it's important in those regional places, with tourism being the number one economy to be able to have a good offering. So they were sympathetic to it and very helpful in that process. And on the other hand, I've seen councils and know of breweries that have taken years to go through a planning process, and that's the opposite end of the spectrum. And I'm glad I didn't have to put up with that.
Oh yeah, there's some pretty dreadful councils out there around Australia. I've certainly seen that in the distilling and brewing space. So back in 2015, 9 years ago, when you started the business, how old were you?
58.
58.
So I was already old in the young man's game.
And maybe take us through the rest of the journey of the business from since then.
Yeah, so we punched above our weight for such a small brewery, such a far way away. My whole vision was about being an activity that people that come up to the ski resorts to ski and board and hike in the summer and cycle and all that. It was to have that experience in the high country doing those things. And I think we got a lot of traction in the media because we were different in that regard, being so far away and so high above the snow line. Because we were already in a tourist economy up there, we got good coverage for that. We made good beers. We got award-winning beers. The water was one thing up there. Our water came from snow melt fed aquifers that were underneath spring water underneath Dinner Plain. So it was fresh and pure, and it really made a difference in the beer. And I think that was acknowledged pretty well in the quality of the product. So we made a really, really good start of it, and it really became fairly well known for anybody who was skiing at Hotham that there was a brewery just down the road, and it was a good place to go.
And how did you go trade-wise in the spring and summer?
Tough.
Yeah, not many
Tough.
mountain biking wouldn't have been big back.
Yeah, mountain biking has gotten quite large, and it was growing during the time that we were going. So that was quite good. So the seasonality up for any business up there is extreme and is very, very difficult to get around. And my business model was I don't need to sell all my product across my threshold. I can sell off the mountain as well. So I can be open to give visitors an experience, and I can make an income from selling off the mountain as well. And that worked pretty well. I thought, I'd have maybe 75% of my business wholesale off the mountain and 25% in the tap room. Turned out that I did more than 50% in the tap room. So we were much more successful than we thought with visitors. Very, very hard in wholesale markets. It's harder now than it was then, but it was hard enough then. And so that made it a bit difficult as well, because the whole pie, that half and half, wasn't as big as the 25-75 I was aiming for. So that was tough. But yeah, the tap room did better than I expected, and the distribution did worse than I expected. And therefore the seasonality bit harder than otherwise it would have.
And so where's the business at now?
So we sold the business during the pandemic lockdowns. I'd realized by then, especially at my advancing age, that there were other things in life I wanted to do. It's a difficult proposition to staff something up there, especially with the seasonality. And I was getting more and more sucked into the business to do everything from literally cleaning toilets and pulling beers, running the canning line, making deliveries, sales and marketing, paying payroll, the whole thing. I couldn't really develop a business, so I wasn't living my purpose and doing the things that I wanted to do. So, and then of course the pandemic came along and lockdown. We didn't have any visitors there for about a year, and that made it even harder and more isolating. So we put it on the market, and we were successful in selling it. Unfortunately, the people that we sold it to, they had a string of venues that they were going to fold it into and make it part of a bigger entity. They got in trouble during the pandemic as well and had to end up selling their venues. So they basically never reopened Blizzard after the lockdowns, and put it on mothballs.
Oh wow. So is it still up there? Just All the equipment?
No, the venue's gone. The equipment's all in storage. The brand has never traded since I sold it, and yeah, it's kind of evaporated, which is a shame because all that hard work to create a brand that had value for people, and we thought we were going to create and expand that value when I sold it, and that didn't transpire.
And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over those 5 or 6 years you owned it?
We were able to grow cash, earnings, and revenue every year that we were there in the 5 years that we operated it. It was quite tiny. We never got to $1 million turnover. The growth was probably a little bit more than the craft beverage average industry growth. So the numbers they weren't bad, but remember too, it was a tiny operation. So and exceedingly expensive just because of its location.
Yeah. And what at your peak, how many liters a year would you have been producing?
About 100,000 liters was our annual production. We had capacity to do a bit more, but we didn't have the markets to do it.
Well, that's a great volume for a craft brewery, I must say, Mark. Well done.
Yeah, yeah, it was we it was hard to manage because all of our volume came. Easter was our biggest weekend, was big as any month. And then, of course, the ski season is much bigger than the summer. We brewed hard to put away enough stock for those periods, and we didn't have enough capacity to do what we needed to do to have it ready. And that was one of the things that was really, really hard to manage. Um, having to have so much for such a short period of time, and the capacity constraints we have and the capital we have invested in the infrastructure, it just didn't pay to have more for such a short period. So that seasonality again bites real hard in your production schedules and how much that you brew. And we'd run out of beer halfway through the season, and we'd be brewing hard to catch up and put some of our favorites back on tap and all that stuff.
Yeah, right. And how many full-time equivalent team members did you start with, and where did you end at?
We started with about three. We had a lot of casuals along the way because of the seasonality and so forth. I'd say we probably actually shrunk in our head count as we went because we really didn't have an opportunity other than the brewer to have a full-time position year round. We'd have the tap room closed for months at a time. So I had family and friends step in, and I did more and more. And so we shrunk staff and concentrated responsibilities amongst fewer people as an economic reality, really.
Yeah. So the three FTE, that includes bundling up all the casuals in that three.
Oh, if you bundle up all the casuals during our winter season, we probably would have about 8 FTE.
And when was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I'm pausing here because it's such a great question, because probably anybody who's gone through this before knows that you go like this.
Yep. Up and down. Yep.
And as long as your peaks keep going the trend, making it upwards, then you're on the right path. But you don't know you've succeeded when you've had a success, because you know that the trough's going to follow it. So, my first success was meeting my timeline and having beer available for Easter in March of 2016. And it was as I've outlined before, it was really, really tough to get there, and a lot of activity had to happen. We got there. So that was my first success. What was in my head, what was on my business plan, translated into reality. I had a tangible product. I had beer. I had a venue. I had people, lots of people coming to see us for our grand opening. And I did that all in a short period of time. So there was a great, tremendous feeling of success and gratitude then. Followed quickly by Mad May, which is the period up in the ski resorts where everybody's getting ready for the season, but nobody's there. The weather's crap. It's too poor to ride your bike and really be outdoors, but it's not enough to ski, and the lifts aren't turning yet anyway. And there's no one there, and you get a bit lonely, and you think, "Oh my God, what have I put myself in for?" And you're preparing. It's like the dinner party before the guests have come. You're trying to get everything ready. There's a lot of activity, but the house is empty. and you're just hoping that people will arrive and enjoy themselves. And then the first season comes and you're brand new, or are people going to find their way to your business? Because we were down in an industrial area of Dinner Plain, not in where the restaurants and the pubs are. And then that's a success because people do find you and they enjoy the experience and they get it. They understand that, this is an authentic experience to have a product that's brewed on site in such a pristine environment be part of their ski and high country experience. So, that was a success. Taking cash out of the business for the first time was success. And that happened after putting more cash in the business many, many, many times. So that was, one of the down parts. So, yeah, I'd say it was a series of successes, and you realize it at the time and you reflect on it and you enjoy it. You've got to take those victories and celebrate them and grab them and and reflect on them when you're having a bit of a tougher time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll mention for the audience, Mount Hotham or Dinner Plains, where you were, is about 3.5 hours northeast of Melbourne in Victoria here in Australia, just for the international audience. What does success look like to you?
I'd say success is achieving your dreams. If you do what you say you're going to do, if you set out with an ambition and get there, that's success. And it doesn't have to be measured monetarily, and it doesn't have to be measured on a calendar, and it doesn't have to be measured by other people's opinions. I think it's measured by you, your gauge, what you set out to do, whether you made yourself happy. I mean, I often quote Marco Pierre White as one of my inspirations for doing this. He was said on MasterChef years ago that if you have a dream, you have a duty and an obligation to yourself to make that dream come true. Because if you don't, you're just a dreamer. And that resonated with me. And I always wanted to have my own business. And I always wanted to spend more time in the ski resorts. And the brewing business was the business that brought those two things together for me. And if I hadn't pursued that, and if I hadn't shown myself that I could do that, I would always have an itch that I hadn't scratched, and I would carry that with me forever, and that would always give me some level of discomfort. So I've got through that.
Marco's quote reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. Thomas Edison, vision without execution is hallucination.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I know. I know that's applicable to a few people I know.
Well, yeah, I know a lot of dreamers. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Um, I'd say engage with it. It's primary importance. Um, People didn't know we were there unless we told them. And in this day and age with social media and everything, there's so many more options available to a small business to be able to successfully market. But you've got to keep your focus on it, and you've got to keep your message fresh, and you've got to make sure that your message is getting into the audience you want to see it. So I'd say keep the focus and make sure you're doing it, because it's going to drive your sales, and it's going to drive your brand, and it's going to drive how people engage with your brand, and it's going to present your brand to a broader audience. So stay on it.
How did you fund the business?
It's me, myself, and I.
Hmm.
I was fortunate enough to have savings available to invest into this business. And I didn't, in the early days, I played with the idea of having partners in it and everything. But in the end, a lot of the things, the timing was personal to me. The things I wanted to do were personal with me. And I thought it's better that I take full responsibility for executing my vision, and therefore for funding my vision. So that's the way I did it.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I would do that again. Yeah, I would do that again. It's a difficult one because the industry is difficult right now. I went into the industry not because I thought I had something I could teach the craft brewing industry in the capital cities, and I didn't have a beer recipe that was going to blow everybody away. I went in specifically for the reason to have a brewing experience in a ski resort. And that is both something that people embrace, your customers embrace, but it's also limiting for your customers. Because if I had the ambience that I created and the brand that I created in Melbourne, I have no doubt it would have been a lot more successful,
Yep.
purely because I would have had a bigger customer base. So with that behind me, would I do it again and learn some lessons? Yeah, I would. But I wouldn't do it in a bigger area without some way to differentiate myself in a very enormous way from the brewers that are already there. So it's kind of tough. How would I get a bigger audience up in the hills? Well, I still don't know how I do that. That's a question I never really learned how to answer.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so the audience can learn from it?
Stressful point is getting through the doubt, is getting through the financial strain, is getting through the loneliness. If you don't have a panel of advisors, if you don't have a business partner, if you don't have staff that are fully engaged and passionate about the businesses you are, and quite frankly, you never will because it's your business, it can be quite isolating and quite lonely. And, on the one hand, you can be very, very nimble in your decision making, and you can be very quick on your feet to make decisions. But the loneliness of doing that without a collaboration, without getting support and validating your ideas, and perhaps validating them before you make mistakes, that can be quite tough. There are ways around that: getting mentoring, getting coaching, having good friends that could help you. Those kinds of things certainly can help. But yeah, dealing with a doubt is one of the toughest parts of the journey.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Sales. I'm an accountant by background,
Oh, I'm sorry
so
to hear that.
yeah, I know that's what most
I,
people's reaction
well,
is.
I've got a business degree majoring in accounting and I work at PricewaterhouseCoopers, so I'd say that in jest because I was almost an accountant.
Yeah. Well, my first job was with Deloitte's after I got my accounting degree at the
Oh, there
University
you
of
go.
Colorado.
Yeah, right.
So yeah. Yeah, I don't get me wrong, it's a great grounding for business knowledge and business expertise. Um, but it does tend to create a pattern in the way you approach business and the way you approach problems. And so sales was something new to me. And I had to teach myself how to be an effective salesman. And I think the biggest issue I had with that was I took it personally. If people didn't want to buy my product, it was a blow to me, and it hurt. I couldn't just shrug it off. And I think I became a fairly effective salesman, but I didn't like doing it because the no's hurt.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Oh, it's feeling you're always behind. Um, if you're always feeling you're catching up, it gives you a feeling you're not in control. And if you're a victim of your own success, if you're growing that fast, um, you can cover for a lot of sins, but it doesn't necessarily cover for the way you feel about how things are, because it does feel like there's things are going forward without you, and you need to get in front of it, and to do that takes a lot out of you sometimes.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
Yeah, reaching targets, um,
Says says
creating the
says the ex-accountant. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. But then I'll say something that's on the other side of the
Yeah.
brain is scratching the creative itch, um, achieving your vision, doing the things that you had in your mind, um, having a customer come up and tell you, God, I like what you're doing here. Um, you get it. This is a venue that I really like, and I'll come back to. I like your product. I like the feeling I get when I come into your venue. Those kinds of things, and that happens because you've created something, and so that's certainly one of the best parts of it.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Uh, Escaping from the comfort of the accountant which when I first started, if I got stressed about something, I'd go to the books, and plan expenditure and plan sales and look at forecasts and pay bills and make sure everything was hunky dory there, make sure I understood the cash flow, all that stuff. And that's not what's needed. Sometimes you need to be out talking with your customers. You need to be out creating content for your marketing and all that kind of stuff. And fortunately, I learned that lesson pretty quick. And I learned it to the extent too, because my accounting department soon lagged behind my sales and marketing departments, and I was in charge of them all.
Yeah, right. The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Probably perseverance and dealing with a doubt, putting routines into place to keep discipline, keep on message, keep on point, review your business plan, understand where you want it to be, where you are. Sometimes you'll find your ahead, sometimes you find you're behind, but if you can measure it, you can manage it. So adopting those kinds of habits so that you are in control of the business rather than the business being in control of you will go a long way.
Do you need a guide on how to build your own money printing marketing machine? Do you feel like marketing is a mysterious art, only cracked by a chosen few? Fear not, we get it. Mastering marketing can be like taming a dragon. Download a copy of the Marketing Funding Flywheel ebook, which has 41 pages packed with over 50 tools and tips for your business. Let's get into it. Head to growasmallbusiness.com. We have plenty of resources waiting for you in the footer of our website. Can you talk to how you added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Unfortunately, I made more mistakes than I had wins, and I won't go into that.
Sorry, mate, start that again. You just broke up again.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was probably one of the more difficult parts of our business because of our remote area and the fact that we didn't really offer careers. We offered positions over seasons. And I had more losses than wins there. And I don't want to go into it because some of it was quite personal. Some of it was just the skills weren't available and you'd settle, which is a tough thing to do. And then you settle and you get upset with yourself. So you don't have that person anymore and you end up doing it yourself.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Communication. Yeah, if it's imperative that everybody understands the vision, that everybody's buys into that vision, everybody understands their part of delivering that vision. The communication is about making sure that everybody's traveling in the same direction and that you have a cohesive team and they're all delivering their component of the overall thing.
Tell the audience how you've handled balance.
I presume this would be balance between your personal life and your business life as a business owner. I handled it poorly. One of the reasons for going into business for myself was to spend more time with my family and to be more in control of my time and my commitments and so forth. And in the end, it was difficult because of the way I'm built and the way I think and everything, that the business took even more priority in my life than my corporate life had. And you almost feel held hostage by your business sometimes because it is yours and it's, you need to nurture it. You need to keep it growing. You need to keep it alive. And sometimes no one can do it like you can. And so that was very, very hard. And so I didn't handle that balance very well at all. And that was probably one of my reasons for wanting to sell as well. I'm not living my purpose when that happens. And so what words of advice? I think be aware of it, get the help, mentoring and the team around you that we spoke about before, and make sure that you can achieve that balance. And if you can't, you might have to think about whether you're doing the right thing or not.
And how much professional development did you invest in yourself for this business?
Little. Again, going back to the balance question, I probably could have used some help then, but um, yeah, no, I that we didn't get to a stage in the development of the business and the maturity of the business that we could put resources into that, and that's too bad because that certainly would have helped me. Um, but it's something that certainly can help with balance and things like that.
Did you have mentors or coaches along the way?
I had a couple of my customers that were helpful to me in that regard, and it was kind of an informal thing, but it was very useful. And it started collaborations that I did in co-branding product with them. So that was good. It was delicate though too because they did remain my customers. So um, but yeah, it was quite helpful and quite rewarding and very gratifying to be able to have a relationship with a customer like that on a personal level, on a professional level, as well as a customer supplier level, where you're doing something together for the customers of those businesses and amplifying the brand of both together. So that worked quite well. And as you know, brewing is quite a collaborative industry.
Hmm.
And so doing things along these lines I found very, very useful.
And I assume you didn't have a board of directors or advisors then?
No, no. And that would have been helpful. We never really got to a size where it would be something to consider on a paid basis. And those people on a voluntary basis didn't really want to have a liability or anything like that. A board of advisors that doesn't have the fiduciary responsibility of directors is a good idea. But again, you'll have to figure out how you structure that. And if you're getting sucked into the business so much that you can't even think your own strategy, it's difficult to organize others to help you as well.
Yeah, totally agree. Now, you're one of the few we've had on Mark that's exited a business. You got any advice for our audience listening about exiting one day?
Again, I think be clear about what you want out of it, why you're doing it. Can you articulate what you want for the brand, what you want for yourself personally? Um, be clear about the value that you can bring, or the value that you're offering, I should say, and how you structure that exit. In my case, I was going to get royalties and continue to have a role in the business, which would have suited me great because I could continue nurturing my brand, my baby, but not have all the responsibility fall on my shoulders. And in the event I didn't do enough diligence on my purchaser to understand that they were struggling
Yeah.
and they weren't going to be able to keep their end of the bargain on some of the things that they brought to me. That might have been an unusual circumstance because it did happen during lockdowns, but that doesn't prevent it from happening in other circumstances either, I suppose.
And what year did you sell? Was it 2020 or 21?
2020.
All right, Mark, we're on to our final five questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Growth. Growth can be a master. Um, and it can obviously it's rewarding. Obviously, to sustain a business, you need to grow, but to always have your focus on growth and always be innovating and doing everything you need to do to sustain growth, puts you on a treadmill and you got to keep going. So maybe the hardest thing about achieving growth is being able to have the ideas, the innovation to continue to achieve growth. It's not sometimes as simple as putting more capital in to derive more return on that capital. There's other things that come into play.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
100 days. What's it called? It's on my shelf here. The first 90 days.
Right. Mm.
A blueprint for your first 90 days in business. I think that probably helped me with the discipline needed to get Blizzard open according to my time frames as much as anything. And it's helped me in outside of the industry as well, outside of my business as well.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Um, I listen to a lot of Brews News and podcasts from Crafty Pint Media Press. Um, that helps you keep plugged in and feel part of the community. Those were and remain important to me.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Planning and forecasting. And that's some people from my corporate background, you'd see people put in forecasts that were unbelievable, but they knew would please the boss. And that's an exercise in futility. So if it's your own and you're looking after growing your business, figure out where you really expect to be and really what you can do and look at the plan realistically that way. And that's a great tool for a roadmap to get to where you want to be. But it's only going to be a roadmap if it's realistic. If it's a fiction, it's just going to take you off the cliff with it.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir here, Mark. Part of our business transformation program, the business owners that go through it, we build a 10-year financial model. That's the first thing we do, because then you backfill the actual business plan, because we believe the strategic planning should start with the numbers. And that can be really enlightening, especially when you challenge the owner. And so this is a really important number here. This could make or break the business. Why do you think that number is going to be that number or grow by that much? Can you show some third-party evidence? And that makes it a lot more robust, the planning.
Yeah.
Well, finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 9 years ago?
How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's about a plan. It's a gigantic journey. And if you've got your vision down here, this is what you want to achieve. It's again quite overwhelming to think of how you're going to get there and if you're going to get there. So make a start. Keep going. Have a plan. Follow the plan. One bite at a time. You get there.
Great advice. Thank you very much for your time today, Mark. I really enjoyed our chat.
My pleasure.
And I'm gutted I never actually got to visit your brewery. Part of my role as chairperson of a craft brewery in Tassie, whenever I travel, I try and check out as many breweries as I can. And I'm disappointed I didn't know yours was there. I could have got some skiing in at the same time. So congratulations on the opening and the growth of the business. And you did sell it. I know there's some ups and downs, but phenomenal effort, particularly to open in 7 months. So well done on your journey.
Thank you so much.
We're getting some great iTunes reviews. For those listening, please pop over to your podcast app and leave us a review.